Hare Krishna. Sri Narada's instruction on Srimad Bhagavatam for Vyasdeva by Priyanka Raichan. Background: Shaunak Muni's inquisitiveness. Sut Goswami glorifies Srimad Bhagavatam, and a sincere audience, like great sages headed by the sage Shaunak, assembled at Naimishrayana, is always eager to hear more about the glories of Bhagavatam. Hence, it leads to further inquiries made by Shaunak Muni to Sut Goswami about Bhagavatam. Shaunak Muni said, "O Sut Goswami, you are the most fortunate and respected of all those who can speak and recite. Please relate the pious message of Srimad Bhagavatam, which was spoken by the great and powerful sage Shukdev Goswami." Shaunak Muni, he asked the questions related to three categories. The first category of questions belonged to Vyasdeva. The other category of questions were related to Shukdev Goswami, and the third set of questions were related to Maharaj Parikshit. Shaunak Muni inquires about Srimad Bhagavatam history. In what period and at what place was this first begun? And why was this taken up? From where did Krishna Dvaipana Vyasa, the great sage, get the inspiration to compile this literature? Because Srimad Bhagavatam is the special contribution of Srila Vyasdeva, there are so many inquiries by the learned Shaunak Muni. It was known to them that Srila Vyasdeva had already explained the text of the Vedas in various ways up to the Mahabharata for the understanding of the less intelligent women, Shudras, and fallen members of the family of twice-born men. Srimad Bhagavatam is transcendental to all of them because it has nothing to do with anything mundane. So the inquiries are very intelligent and relevant. Sut Goswami answers first category of inquiries. Sut Goswami said, when the second millennium overlapped the third, the great sage Vyasdeva was born to Prashara in the womb of Satyavati, the daughter of Vasu. Once upon a time, he, Vyasdeva, as the sun rose, took his morning ablution in the waters of the Saraswati and sat alone to concentrate. Srila Vyasadeva's transcendental vision. The great sage Vyasdeva saw anomalies in the duties of the millennium. This happens on the earth in different ages due to the unseen force of time. The great sage, who was fully equipped in knowledge, could see through his transcendental vision the deterioration of everything material due to the influence of the age. He could also see that the faithless people in general would be reduced in duration of life and would be impatient due to lack of goodness. Thus he contemplated for the welfare of men in all the status and orders of life. Srila Vyasdeva responds to anomalies, division of Vedas based on sacrifices. So Srila Vyasdeva divided the original Yajurveda in four Vedas: Rig Veda, Samaveda, Yajur, and Atharva Veda. He saw that the sacrifices mentioned in the Vedas were means by which the people's occupations could be purified. And to simplify the process, he divided the one Veda into four in order to expand them among men. And the fifth Veda is the Puranas and the Itihasas. Itihasas include Mahabharata and Ramayana. The four divisions of original sources of Vedas were made separately, but the historical facts and authentic stories mentioned in the Puranas are called the fifth Veda. Srila Vyasdeva compassion. Thus the great sage Vyasdeva, who is very kind to the ignorant masses, edited the Vedas so they might be assimilated by less intelligent men. Out of compassion, the great sage thought it was wise that this would enable men to achieve the ultimate goal of life. Thus he compiled the great historical narration called the Mahabharata for women, laborers, and friends of the twice-born. Result of welfare without Krishna, Sri Vyasadeva's dissatisfaction. O twice-born Brahmanas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Srila Vyasdeva was not satisfied with himself, although he had prepared literatures of Vedic value for all-round welfare for the general mass of people. It was expected that he would be satisfied by all such activities, but ultimately he was not satisfied. Srila Vyasadeva's introspection. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself, actually, our position is that we are always rendering service to someone, either to our family, country, or society. If we have no one to serve, sometimes we keep a pet cat or dog and render service to it. All these factors prove that we are constitutionally meant to render service. Yet, in spite of serving to the best of our ability, we are not satisfied. Nor is the person to whom we are rendering the service is satisfied. On the material platform, everyone is frustrated. The reason for this is that the service being rendered is not properly directed. For example, if we want to render service to a tree, we must water the root. If we pour water on the leaves, branches, and twigs, there is little benefit. If the Supreme Personality of Godhead is served, all other parts and parcels will be automatically satisfied. Consequently, all welfare activities as well as service to society, family, and nation are realized by serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead. SSR Chapter 1. Srila Vyasdeva Introspection. I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras, and others can see the path of religion. I am feeling incomplete. Though I myself am fully equipped with everything required by the Vedas. Undoubtedly, Srila Vyasdeva was complete in all the details of Vedic achievements. Purification of the living being submerged in water is made possible by the prescribed activities in the Vedas, but the ultimate achievement is different. Unless it is attained, the living being, even though fully equipped, cannot be situated in the transcendently normal stage. Srila Vyasdeva appeared to have lost the clue, and therefore he felt dissatisfaction. This may be because I did not specifically point out the devotional service to the Lord, which is dear both to perfect beings and to the infallible Lord. Srila Vyasdeva is thinking or introspecting like this. He got the point that he has not vividly mentioned the devotional service of the Lord, as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, second chapter, 6th verse. Sa vaipamsam paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaja ahotiki apratihata yatatma suprasidati. The supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendental Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. The appearance of Shivyas, Narada. As mentioned before, Narada reached the cottage of Krishna Dvaipana Vyasa on the banks of Saraswati, just as Vyasdeva was regretting his defects. Although Vyasdeva was an empowered divinity, he still felt dissatisfaction because in none of his work were the transcendental activities of the Lord properly explained. The inspiration was infused by Sri Krishna directly in the heart of Vyasdeva, and thus he felt the vacuum as explained above. It is definitely expressed herewith that without the transcendental loving service of the Lord, everything is void. At the auspicious arrival of Srila Narada, Sri Vyasdeva got up and respectfully and worshipped him, giving him veneration equal to that given to Brahmaji, the creator. Sud Goswami said, thus the sage amongst the god Narada, comfortably seated and apparently smiling, addressed the rishi amongst the Brahmanas, Vyasdeva. Naradji hints Vyasdeva cause of despondency. Addressing Vyasdeva, the son of Prashara, Narad Muni inquired, are you satisfied by identifying with the body or the mind as objects of real self-realization? Your inquiries were full and your studies were also well fulfilled. And there is no doubt that you have prepared a great and wonderful work, the Mahabharata, which is full of all kinds of Vedic sequences elaborately explained. You have fully delineated the subject of impersonal Brahman as well as the knowledge derived therefrom. Why should you be despondent in spite of all this, thinking that you are undone, my dear Prabhu? Srila Vyasdeva reveals his heart. Guham Akhyati Prachati. Srila Vyasdeva said, all you have said about me is perfectly correct. Despite all this, I am not pacified. I therefore question you about the root cause of my dissatisfaction, for you are a man of unlimited knowledge due to your being the offspring of one who is self-born. In the material world, everyone is engrossed with the idea of identifying the body or the mind with the self. As such, all knowledge disseminated in the material world is related either with the body or with the mind, and that is the root cause of all despondencies. This is not always detected, even though one may be the greatest erudite scholar in materialistic knowledge. It is good, therefore, to approach a personality like Narada to solve the root cause of all despondencies. Srila Narada diagnoses Srila Vyasadeva's despondency. Srila Narada Muni said, "You have not actually broadcast the sublime and spotless glories of the personality of Godhead. That philosophy which does not satisfy the transcendental senses of the Lord is considered worthless. The compiler of the Vedanta Darshana is Vyasdeva himself, yet he is troubled, although he is the author. So what sort of transcendental bliss can be derived by the readers and listeners of the Vedanta, which is not explained directly by Vyasdeva, the author? Herein arises the necessity of explaining Vedanta Sutra in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam by the self-same author." Sri Narada specifies Sri Vyasadeva's mistakes. Although great sage, you have very broadly described the four principles beginning with religious performances. You have not described the glories of Supreme Personality, Vasudeva. Whatever you desire to describe that is separate in vision from the Lord simply reacts with different forms, names and results to agitate the mind as the wind agitates a boat which has no resting place. The people in general are naturally inclined to enjoy, and you have encouraged them in that way in the name of religion. This is readily condemned and is quite unreasonable because they are guided under your instructions. They will accept such activities in the name of religion and will hardly care for prohibitions. Sri Narada tells two types of literature. First, those words which do not describe the glories of the Lord, who alone can sanctify the atmosphere of the whole universe, are considered by saintly persons to be like unto a place of pilgrimage for crows, since the all perfect persons are inhabitants of transcendental abode. They do not derive any pleasure there. On the other hand, the literature which is full of descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, forms, fame, pastimes, etc. of unlimited Supreme Lord is a different creation full of transcendental words directed toward bringing about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though imperfectly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. Sri Narada specifies glories of pure devotional service. Knowledge of self-realization, even though free from all material affinity, does not look well if devoid of a conception of the infallible God. What then is the use of fruitive activities, which are naturally painful from the very beginning and transient by nature, if they are not utilized for the devotional service of the Lord? One who has forsaken his material occupations to engage in devotional service to the Lord may sometimes fall down while in an immature stage. Yet there is no danger of his being unsuccessful. On the other hand, a non-devotee, though fully engaged in occupational duties, does not gain anything. My dear Vyasa, even though a devotee of Lord Krishna sometimes falls down somehow or other, he certainly does not undergo material existence like others, fruitive workers, etc. Because a person who has once relished the taste of the lotus feet of Lord can do nothing but remember that ecstasy again and again. Learned circles have positively concluded that the infallible purpose of the advancement of knowledge, namely austerities, study of the Vedas, sacrifice, chanting of hymns, and charity, culminates in the transcendental description of the Lord, who is defined in the choice poetry. Now Srila Narada glorifies qualifications of Srila Vyasdeva to write down the scripture specifically that glorifies the devotional service to Lord. Narada Muni tells Vyasdeva that he is qualified to distinctly write about the glories of Supreme Personality of Godhead and devotional service. O Vyasdeva, your vision is completely perfect. Your good fame is spotless. You are firm in vow and situated in truthfulness, and thus you can think of the pastime of the Lord in trance for the liberation of the people in general from all material bondage. Your goodness is perfect vision. You yourself can know the super soul personality of Godhead because you are present as the plenary portion of the Lord. Although you are birthless, you have appeared on this earth for the well-being of all people. Please therefore describe the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, more vividly. Srila Narada highlights devotional service by his personal example. So Naradji tells that how important is devotional service, or how transforming can devotional service unto Lord be. So Naradji tells about his own last life. O Muni, in the last millennium I was born as the son of a certain maidservant engaged in the service of Brahmanas who were following the principles of Vedanta. When they were living together during the 4 months of the rainy season, I was engaged in their personal service. Although they were impartial by nature, those followers of the Vedanta blessed me with their causeless mercy. As far as I was concerned, I was self-controlled and had no attachment for sports, even though I was a boy. In addition, I was not naughty and I did not speak more than required. Once only, by their permission, I took the remnants of their food, and by doing so, all my sins were at once eradicated. Thus being engaged, I became purified in heart, and at the time, the very nature of the transcendentalist became attractive to me. O Vyasdeva, in that association and by the mercy of those great Vedantists, I could hear them describe the attractive activities of Lord Krishna. And thus, listening attentively, my taste for hearing for the Supreme Personality of Godhead increased at every step. O great sage, as soon as I got a taste of the Personality of Godhead, my attention to hear of the Lord was unflinching. And as my taste developed, I could realize that it was the only in my ignorance that I had accepted gross and subtle coverings, for both the Lord and I are transcendental. Thus, during 2 seasons, the rainy seasons and autumn, I had the opportunity to hear these great souled sages constantly chant the unadulterated glories of the Lord Hari. As the flow of my devotional service began, the coverings of the modes of the passion and ignorance vanished. So here basically Narada is highlighting all the qualities that a person, living entity, must have in order to get pure devotional service to the Lord. I was very much attached to those sages, and I was gentle in behavior, and all my sins were eradicated in their service. In my heart, I had strong faith in them, and I had subjugated the senses, and I was strictly following them with body and mind. As they were leaving, those Bhakti Vedantas, who were very kind to poor-hearted souls, instructed me in the most confidential subject, which is instructed by Personality of Godhead Himself. By the confidential knowledge, I could understand clearly the influence of the energy of Lord Shri Krishna, the creator, maintainer, and annihilator of everything. By knowing that, one can return to Him and personally meet Him. O Brahmana, thus by the Supreme Lord Krishna, I was endowed first with the transcendental knowledge of the Lord as inculcated in the confidential parts of the Vedas, then with the spiritual opulences, and then with the intimate loving service. Sri Narada instructs Vyasdeva for the right course of action. So finally he instructs the Vyasdeva that what he should do now. The Supreme Lord is unlimited. Only a very expert personality retired from the activities of material happiness deserves to understand this knowledge of spiritual values. Therefore, those who are not so well situated due to their material attachment should be shown the ways of transcendental realization by your goodness through descriptions of the transcendental activities of the Supreme Lord. O Brahmana Vyasdeva, it is decided by the learned that the best remedial measure for removing all troubles and miseries is to dedicate one's activities to the service of the Supreme Lord Personality of Godhead Shri Krishna. O good soul, does not a thing applied therapeutically cure a disease which was caused by that very same thing? So the example here given is of milk. Milk preparation sometimes causes disorder of the bowels, but the very same milk converted into curd and mixed with some other remedial ingredients cure such disorders. Similarly, the threefold miseries of material existence cannot be mitigated simply by material activities. Such activities have to be spiritualized, just as by fire iron is made red hot, and thereby the action of the fire begins. Similarly, the material conception of a thing is at once changed as soon as it is put into the service of the Lord. That is the secret of spiritual success. Thus, when all a man's activities are dedicated to the Supreme Lord, those very activities which caused his perpetual bondage become the destroyer of the tree of work. Whatever work is done here in this life for the satisfaction of the mission of the Lord is called Bhakti Yoga, or transcendental loving service to the Lord, and what is called knowledge becomes a concomitant factor. While performing duties according to the order of Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one constantly remembers Him, His names and His qualities. Let us all chant the glories of Vyasdeva along with His plenary expansions Pradyumna, Aniruddha and Sankarshana. Thus, He is the actual seer who worships in the form of transcendental sound representation, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Vishnu, who has no material form. Please therefore describe the Almighty Lord's activities, which you have learned by your vast knowledge of the Vedas, for that will satisfy the hankerings of the great learned men, and at the same time mitigate the miseries of the masses of common people who are always suffering from the material pangs. Indeed, there is no other way to get out of such miseries. Thank you, Jai Srila Prabhupada.